I joined the Navy in 1935. I went to what they call a radio school and learned to be a radioman. So I was a radioman. I served on submarine rescue vessels, qualified in submarines on the USS 23. On the USS, what's the name of it? Some submarine, a destroyer, a DD-214, that was her name. She had her name, but I don't remember what it was. I was there in Pearl Harbor, based in Pearl Harbor, for the first 4 years. I re-enlisted in Norfolk, Virginia. The Navy Department sent a telegram to me requesting that I re-enlist in the Navy. I was working for the Ford Motor Company. And they said they would give me back my rank, radioman second class at that point in time, transfer me any place in the world that the Navy had people. All I had to do is pick it. So I picked Hawaii again. I wanted to go right back to Pearl Harbor. They kept their promise. They sent me back to Pearl Harbor. 6 weeks later, they put me on another Navy transport and sent me to China. I reported to the USS Canopus submarine tender. We had 29 submarines that we were the mothership to in the Asiatic theater. I made radioman first class. We spent 40 and 41 surveying the southern Philippines, the Dutch East Indies, for hiding places for our submarines. The mostly uncharted waters. We would go in and take soundings so a submarine could go in and hide if it was deep enough. We got word, really, what was it? It was about October of 41. I was told in Manila, a friend of mine, Japanese incidentally, that Randall, get the hell out of here. You're not going to make it if you don't get out of here, but real quick. I reported that to the Canopus, the hierarchy there, and they took whatever precautions they could do again in the time frame. They mounted 50 caliber machine guns on the Canopus, because the only armament we had on the Canopus was what they called a 5-inch long tom cannon. That was the only gun we had. But they mounted 4 50 caliber machine guns on there for our defense. We were told when the Japanese ambassador went through Manila, it's your last chance. If you're not gone within a week, you will never get out. We did not get gone. We got the word Pearl Harbor had been bombed. It was already the 8th in Manila. We watched the Japanese bomb. We couldn't see them at Clark Field, but we heard them. And then they come to Nichols Field in Manila and blasted it. And then they come to the Cavite Navy Yard and blasted it. They hit the Canopus a couple of times, lightly. We were very fortunate there. The war progressed. We ended up in Marvelous Bay at the foot of Bataan. In December, our ship was bombed very badly. And you can see the pictures out there somewhere of the results of that. It's a depiction of what we looked like, of an artist's rendition of what we looked like after the Japs. But we were still functional. We were still loading submarines with torpedoes, diesel fuel, food, and whatnot. The Army asked for volunteers to set up a switchboard. I think it was between Corregidor and the generals on Baton. We set up a switchboard, another radioman and myself. We volunteered. A couple of weeks later, they sent 2 Army sergeants in there. That was too cushy a job for Navy people. So they sent the Army in to take over, and they did. We went to the signal depot, worked with the 112th Signal Operation Division until April the 9th, when King surrendered Baton. My last orders from the Army was, you are on your own. I had 2 choices. I could try to go through the Jap lines and maybe become a guerrilla fighter, or I could go back down and join the Canopus at Marvelis. Only trouble when I got down to Marvelis, the ships were gone. It was sitting out there in the middle of the bay sinking. Tilted down about like that at that point in time. So me and 2 other guys managed to get over to Corregidor with swimming, flotsam, jet, whatever that was there that we could float on. And when we were assigned to the 4th Battalion of the 4th Marines for the next month. We suffered continuous bombings, shellings, probably late April, early May. They hit the battery. We were dug in on a side of a mountain, a trail went along the side of the mountain. The Navy people off of the Canopus were dug in there. Right above us was a 12-inch shore battery that was set. It would only shoot to sea. It was for sea defense, not for. It was on fire. The shell room had been blasted in. And they asked for volunteers to help do whatever we could to save it. Well, I firmly believe to this day that had we not saved that battery, not only us, the 4 or 5 guys who went up there to help, but I believe the entire Canopus crew would have died, because we were right below, and we had seen what a 12-inch gun magazine, when it blew, would do. It had 12-inch mortars, and 12-inch, that's a big shell. The magazine blew on one of them. They blew those big mortars a half a mile away. That's how much magazine blast there was. Probably like a small atomic bomb for all I know. But anyway, we got the fire put out. The Army lieutenant, I have no idea what his name is now, took all of our names from the Navy guys' names and says, thank you, and you will be hearing from the Army. Well, when I got back to the States, I heard from the Army. I'd been recommended for the Navy Cross. The Navy reduced it to Silver Star. But when Wainwright surrendered Corregidor and the rest of the Philippines, the Mindanao, all those islands down south, on May the 6th. We were then Japanese from then on for the next 3.5 years. The 1,500 men that I was with were sent on the Totori Maru Japanese transport. 1,500 Americans and 1,500 Japanese soldiers. We went in and out of Formosa, Taiwan now, a goodly number of times, dodging our submarines shooting torpedoes at us. And they missed us a couple of times, very close, but they missed, fortunately. The Japs finally decided that the POWs, although we were not POWs, we were slave labor. We had been sold to the MKK Corporation as slave labor to do something in Manchuria. We went to Mukden, Manchuria. Now Shenyang, China, incidentally. We were up there, got up there November 11th, 1942. Raining, no protection, open body trucks hauled out to the prison camp where we were spent the first winter. We were put to work building a machine tool factory to manufacture 1923 model Brown and Sharp automatic shoe machines. We took that machine apart a piece at a time, made blueprints, started manufacturing it. We did everything in our power to continue fighting the Japanese. We screwed up as much as we dared and still to stay alive on all the machine tools that we were operating. I started as a draftsman. I couldn't draw a straight line, even with a ruler. Then they put me on the lathe, and I kept making parts undersized where they couldn't use them. Then they put me on the shaper. I kept breaking machine tools, digging into the work that was going back, smoothing it out. They put me on a grinder. I kept breaking the grinding tools. I ended up outside hauling pig iron in ingots down to the foundry to be heat treated. And that's where I spent the rest of the time. We had lots of interest in the factory. One of them, a Korean girl, got caught fornicating with an American soldier. They chopped off her head. 3 men escaped from the camp. They caught them 3 days later, brought them back into camp, lined up the entire camp, put machine guns all around us, just to be sure we didn't do anything, and beat them to death. Well, I can't say that they beat them to death for sure, but they drug them out by feet first when they left, and we never saw them again. So we assumed that they beat them to death. It was unmerciful anyway. Well, another interesting operation was when we stole a newspaper, Japanese newspaper, down at the factory, got it translated a little bit, and Roosevelt had died. Well, we will walk back into the camp. It was about a mile and a half then. First year was about 5 miles. And one of our guys asked a Japanese guard, "Why did Rosa die from?" Well, the shit hit the fan. Pardon me. You'll have to erase that one. They tore that camp apart. Every stitch of clothing we had could either been slit or just wadded up. Every little thing we had on a shelf above us, that our toilet gear, everything. They ripped it apart looking for the radio that we didn't have. We got it down at the factory. We, by stealing the news from the Japanese, we knew how the war was progressing. Like when the Americans retook Guam. The Americans lost 5 aircraft carriers, 2 battleships, 40 cruisers, destroyers, thousands of airplanes. But the Japanese lost Guam. But we knew that was a bunch of crap, because we only had a couple of battleships that survived Pearl Harbor. We only had 5 aircraft carriers in the entire Navy when the war started. But we knew they were coming anyway. And I guess it was, June, July, or something. We heard they had invaded Okinawa. And we knew where Okinawa was, and we knew what was coming next. And we were expected to die. The Japanese had issued orders. If the Americans ever invaded the main islands of Japan, the prisoners were to be executed summarily. We expected it. Nothing happened. I guess it was about August 14th, 15th, somewhere along there. We saw a 4-engine airplane fly across the southern end of our viewing area from the prison camp, and a bunch of colored parachutes came out of that airplane. Well, we knew that was wrong. They didn't play that kind of game. That night we had an American colonel sitting with his butt on the Japanese colonel's desk, and we knew that the war was over. Next morning they made the announcement, lined us all up, made the announcement. You could have heard a pin drop in that. There wasn't any shouting or screaming or anything like that. And it's dead silence. We just walked away. Of course, that silence didn't last too long. Probably an hour later, we were outside the fence. I weighed myself at a Japanese brewery. I weighed 44 kilograms, and I was one of the better people in shape at that point in time. That's 96 pounds. B-29s came in, bombarded us with food, cases of peaches, everything you could name. And when I say bombarded, the first time they came over too fast. Parachute had come out and ripped loose from the package, and the package went through the barracks roof, through the kitchen roof and whatnot. We went from there eventually. Well, we were actually, I think, quote unquote, liberated by the Russians. The Kwantung Army came down, and there was a big Russian tank parked outside our gate, and a buxom Russian lady poked her head up out of the hole, and the only question they wanted to know was, where did you bury the guards? Where did you bury the guard? They didn't ask where they were, just where we buried them. That's the way they treated theirs. It took several weeks for them to get the really sick guys. They were flying out by airplane. I was not one of the really sick ones, so I was there. We finally got out by train, went down to Port Arthur, and well, I can't really give you dates there, but I can from there on. We went out on an Army transport minesweepers in front and on each side sweeping the mines out, blowing them up as they went. We got to Okinawa, typhoon was coming in, and the Navy, in their wisdom, they always went to sea when the typhoon came in because their anchors wouldn't hold them, and you know, in most cases. We went back out with the fleet, hit a mine, blew a 38-foot hole in the side of the ship. The Navy was circling us, spilling crude oil on the typhoon-engendered waves, trying to keep the ship from breaking in half. Well, the typhoon passed. We got back. They towed us back into Okinawa, and they put us in prison camp. The Americans, we were in a big barbed wire enclosure of some kind, with locks on the gate and Marine guards outside. They were treating us pretty good. They flew milk into us from somewhere, Manila or somewhere, and they fed us good. But we didn't get the chance to go anywhere, that's for sure. Finally got us on another ship. Went from the ship to Guam, Fleet Hospital 102. We were there several weeks, got another ship, and we went to San Francisco. I can't, okay, I'll leave that part out. We got to San Francisco. We were in the Oak Knoll Hospital, and they were processing us to go to the hospital nearest our hometown. Well, mine happened to be, since I was from Nebraska, mine happened to be Norman, Oklahoma. They dumped a bunch of colonels off of the airplane to put some of us POWs that were going to Norman, Oklahoma. And on the way, the pilot says, I have to land in Kansas City, and you'll be run by bus back over to Norman. But I'm going to spring an oil leak and land in Norman and fix my oil leak and let you guys off there so you can just ride a truck into the hospital. We did. He did. He said, yep, I fixed my oil leak, got back in the cockpit, and away he went. I guess he eventually landed in Kansas City. Went home. I always said I'd cut a swath 100 miles wide from coast to coast if I ever got out of there. I did. And halfway back again. Got married, divorced, remarried to a wonderful woman. She's dead now. Not my second wife in there. We've been married about 10 years now. Re-enlisted in the Navy. Finished out my naval career. That part of my naval career was very nasty. Let's just put it that, very nasty. I finally retired in 1955. Went to the University of Florida. Got an education, bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Went to work for the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for the next 25 years on fusion research. And here I am today. That's all of it.